Right, so like I said, this is our special on the dark web, where we'll take a look at all the dark secrets that revolve around the internet, how it thrives, how it flourishes, how it's helped in encouraging drug trades, sex trades, acts of pedophilia, child sex labor, and much more. A lot of these black markets have been emerging on the dark web for some time now, and very recently two major websites have been shut down. That's Bay and Hansa. Both of them have been shut down by law enforcement in a collaborative effort, and has finally been taken down, much to the relief of government agencies and enforcement agencies as well. Now, of course, governments around the world have considered banning and or even restricting access to the dark web to limit its use by criminals and extremist groups such as ISIS. And of course, there's another side to this thing as well, that civil liberties advocates and whistleblowers say that the dark web is the last line of defense against government spying on their citizens and invading their privacy. We'll be taking a look at all these issues, how it exactly works out, and we will of course be joined by our panelists very soon on the show who will highlight on these issues, to get better perspective on this. And of course, dark web is often accused of harboring harmful content, but the question is, does the darknet also serve as a place to securely communicate without your privacy being infringed upon? Okay, now to get some more perspective on this, I'm joined in the studio by my tech correspondent, Ankit Tuteja. Ankit, there's a lot of mythology surrounding the darknet. It's constantly evolving, it's constantly shaping up. Just break it all down for us. What exactly is the dark web, and why is it so controversial?
Sahil, at times I get really confused as to I should be concerned more about my online safety, or I should be concerned more about my safety in the real world. You know what, when we talk about crimes in the real life, we have authorities, we have regulations to govern those crimes and wrongdoings. But when we talk about the online safety, we do not have strong data protection laws, we do not have any strong regulations to govern those crimes. And on top of that, when we talk about the cyber crimes, they can be only reported when they are traceable. But what about the crimes when you cannot trace them at all? And that is where we talk about dark web. To understand what is dark web, the phrase, the statement, it looks very simple, dark web. But what it is actually, why is it a big deal? Why everyone is talking about it these days? So to understand what is dark web, we need to understand the term in details. Everything that cannot be accessible through special software. So first of all, what is dark web? To simplify, to break it down for our watchers, I need to tell you anything that cannot be Googled is dark web. To break it down even further, anything that cannot be indexed on the web is dark web. So it's very simple. If you cannot Google it, that's in the space of dark web. Accessible through special software, survives in an encrypted network. So basically, when you cannot access it on Google, when it's not indexed on the web, that means that there is it's a kind of software that is being hidden from the government. So to understand it, that it survives in an encrypted network, of course, it's a decentralized system, it's an encrypted network, and it's not easy for the regulators to actually keep a track of all these, because the servers are there in different countries, and it's very difficult to trace the communication flow from one server to the other. That's why we call it dark web. Servers in different countries, as I was talking about, it's a peer-to-peer software system basically. The communication flow is decentralized, so it's not possible for countries, for regulators to actually keep a track of. As we know, the internet has no geographical boundaries. No one country owns the internet. So servers are placed in different countries. For example, in the case of Alphabet, servers were placed in Thailand, in Britain, in France. So it was not easy for the government to actually keep a track and crack down on these websites. Masked identities of operators and users. Of course, these, when you talk about the black market, when you talk about the dark web, they actually are very particular about the identities of their operators, of their vendors, as well as the buyers. Cryptocurrency aids business model. This is one of the important points when you talk about dark web. Dark web cannot thrive in the absence of money. And we talk about the money now, we have the concept of cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin is one of the most popular cryptocurrency. And this currency is actually aiding this business model to thrive and flourish in this space of internet. Now, this is dark web, but the bigger point is, why is it a threat? Why we should be concerned about it? Why it matters to all of us? Why is dark web a threat? It enables online criminal activities. Of course, when you cannot trace any activities, it gives the criminals to actually have a base, to have a platform to conduct their criminal activities. So of course it enables online criminal activities. It's very easy for criminals to actually conduct their business in the absence of any regulatory framework. Attracts criminal syndicates, terrorist organizations. So apparently ISIS and other terrorist outfits are actually using this platform to share intelligence plans. When you talk about the countries like US and Britain and of course the Europe, they are actually very particular about the flow of information that is taking place on the internet. But when there is absence of any network, any regulation, it's very easy to share your business plans, to share your intelligence plans on the internet. And that is where the dark web is aiding these terrorist organizations to actually have a communication flow without any disturbance and at ease. Classified information at risk. This is one of the important points. Sensitive information, government has a lot of sensitive data and it cannot be put at risk. For example, when recently we got to know about the Edward Snowden, he actually used one of the network, the Tor network, to actually send the classified sensitive data to media. So classified information can be easily shared using the with the help of Tor network, or say with the help of browsers that operate or that conduct dark web. Threat to national security. Of course, when you can share your classified or when you can share your sensitive data with any third party, it's a threat to national security. When terrorist organizations can have their intelligence plans shared without any interference from the government or in a way that cannot be monitored, of course, it's a threat to national security. Distribution of child abuse images. We know child pornography is a sin, it's a crime. But at the same time, these terrorist organizations, for that matter, anyone who is involved in the business of child pornography, it sets a base for them to actually share child abuse images. So in all, we need to understand that dark web is basically a space, it's a place where people with a criminal mindset actually can conduct their business models without any interference from the government, any regulatory authorities, and they can do it very easily and at ease.
Okay, Ankit, thank you for those details there. But let's get some more context into this. Let's bring you the dark secrets of the underground markets which are thriving on the internet. Authorities have been consistently cracking down on marketplaces hidden in dark space of the web, but that is not stopping these black market businesses from flourishing. This next report tells you more.
It's not just the real world that has underground markets. The internet also houses a plethora of black marketplaces. And quite like in the real world, it's not easy to keep a track of these underground websites. But in what comes as a big development, the US and European police have shut down two of the biggest dark web marketplaces, Bay and Hansa. These online platforms are involved in online trade of drugs, hacking, software, and guns. And their business conduct is what categorizes them as dark web market. What catches the attention here is their reach. Bay alone had more than 200,000 customers worldwide and managing a comprehensive business model. Bay was trading in opioids and toxic chemicals, offering 250,000 listings of illegal drugs, selling drugs such as fentanyl and heroin, carrying ads for guns, counterfeit goods. Bay is claimed to be the largest dark web marketplace. It was operating out of Thailand by a 25-year-old Canadian, Alexandre Cases, who was arrested around 2 weeks ago. And its shutdown early this month led to an increase in traffic on the smaller marketplace Hansa. But little did the Hansa users know that the Dutch police had already secretly taken control of the market servers. After the closure of these marketplaces and the arrests of their administrators, a lot of information about buyers and sellers are coming out, which also include the involvement of criminal gangs. Their names for now have been distributed to law enforcement in 37 countries. While the US agencies may have taken down the largest darknet marketplace in history, the number of vendors in the dark web space is said to have gone up by 8-fold. Well, what lies ahead is yet to be seen. But the recent move has definitely struck a blow to the international drug trade that has been mushrooming online. Bureau Report, WION.
Now to talk more on this, I'm joined by Rahul Tyagi, VP of Lucidius, and cyber law expert Pavan Duggal on Skype. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. And Mr. Duggal, let me come over to you first. If you just saw that report, if you just heard that report, you might know that Bay and Hansa, two of the largest dark websites in the world, have been shut down. Surely a big blow for criminals who operate within the safe confines of the dark web. Your thoughts on this, sir?
I think these shutdowns is a distinct positive progress made, but then it's a small step in a huge journey of miles. We have to quickly realize that much that we have been successful in shutting down this two largest darknet markets, the vacuum is already existing, and there are n number of players who are waiting to fill up that particular vacuum. So given the intrinsic architecture of the darknet, I'm very clear that this vacuum is going to be filled up very quickly. It's always going to be a cat and mouse catching game, but the bigger issue is the entire aspect or the approach of pulling down these markets the only way of dealing with things? I'm not so sure. See, this pulling down of some markets could take place. Your names could be distributed to law enforcement agencies across the world. However, how do you deal with the elephant in the room? Majority of the people are talking about some marks on the wall, but what they're not seeing is a big elephant, and how do we actually address the problem of the elephant? In this case, the elephant being the darknet per se. How do we regulate the darknet? Can there be any particular effective mechanisms? I've been extensively working on the legal and policy issues pertaining to darknet, and in my book on darknet and the law, I've extensively argued that very quickly lawmakers have to find out a way for trying to regulate the misuse of darknet for cybercrime purposes. Please understand, darknet by its own paradigm purposes is not illegal. Every person has got a right to be anonymous. But in case if you are using the darknet for cybercrime purposes, then clearly the law cannot be a mute spectator, and very quickly we have to come up with effective mechanisms to deal with it. It might be a few years away, but nonetheless, the beginnings for the same must begin now.
Okay, Mr. Duggal, do stay with us. Mr. Tyagi, let me come over to you now. Do you think the capability of drug traffickers and other serious criminals around the world has taken a serious hit after the closure of these two websites, or are we just looking at the tip of the iceberg here?
Yeah, absolutely. You said right. It is actually the tip of the iceberg, because it's not the first time FBI or any other investigation agencies has shut down this kind of website. If you remember, in 2013, Silk Road, which was one of the very big marketplace for the online drug and online weapon, and you can talk about all the serious things which can be possible on a criminal internet, it was there. So when it was shut down, that was the time when the owner of the Alpha Bay, Alexandra, he started this website. Maximum people do not know about it, and in 2013 to in just 1 year they have brought up to near about 2 million users on the website. And the biggest problem which I see, that it's not the users are increasing, but there are 40,000 vendors globally who are giving the services to the online drug and all. So shutting down this two websites, it's a tip of the iceberg. But the real challenge which I see as an cybercrime investigator or ethical hacker is that the problem is not with the technology today. The problem is the mindset with the people who are using these kind of services. In India, if you're using Tor network, then there is a very big probability that you are under the radar of the government. So this kind of approach in India, if this thing happen in India there are marketplaces where people are actually going to go and buy online drugs which are there, and this is start happening in India, which is a worried point for us. The countries like UK, countries like US, they have a very, very advanced intelligence agencies and investigation system in terms of cyber, when I say. So if they are finding just two websites after such a long time of investigation, like they have started their research in controlling the server in 2016. So still it takes them 1 year to shut down these two websites. And there are kind of thousands of websites like this which are still not indexed by the investigation agencies. So my worried point is that what if this culture will come to India, and majority of the users which are right now outside India are going to be Indian users who are going to have these kind of services. And not only drugs, there are online weapons. They have giving you 1+1 free offers like e-commerce website, and it's very easy for a simple person to go there and buy anything, and it actually arrives at your home most of the times when you buy something from these kind of dark websites, which is a more worrying point.
Right, of course, Mr. Tyagi, the most obvious question to ask now is India, mature enough to handle the menace of the dark web? Are we at that stage yet?
Well, I don't think so. Till now, we are at a stage to defend the World Wide Web even. But yes, dark web is again the more complex part of the internet. You can't defend anything which you can't see. So this is kind of that game. Traditional internet still have thousands of problems, and as you have seen, after demonetization, we are still suffering with the local crime attacks, like someone stole money from the wallet. So this is beyond. I think it's 100 times more big problem than the traditional cyber crimes which are happening in India. And we are pretty much not, till now, we're not pretty much capable of defending these kind of attacks. And when it comes to deep web, trust me, I don't think there is a single way which I see as an investigation officer or maybe the hacker that how we are going to tackle that. There's no way actually. That's a worrying point.
Okay, Ankit, now let me come over to you first. We heard Mr. Dugal say that, despite the closure of the sites, the takedowns should be by no means, signal the end of dark web's vibrant trade in drugs and other illegal activities. Do you agree with this?
I completely agree with this, that the wide ambit of the darknet is still unmeasured. So consequently, we should not celebrate on small successes. We have to look at the bigger canvas. The bigger canvas is, has the world been able to make a dent in terms of trying to impede the growth of drug or other illegal trade on the darknet? The answer is a crystal clear no. And the problem lies again in the mindset of lawmakers and law enforcement agencies. Majority of the law enforcement agencies do not even want to talk about the darknet or even acknowledge its presence per se. You yourself said in your report that in this particular case, the names of the relevant persons have been sent to 37 countries' law enforcement agencies. So out of 190 plus countries, you just said circulated to 37 countries. That itself will give you a sampling of how selectively we are going forward. But the bigger issue is, how can we stop the linkages between the darknet and the real world? The darknet is thriving. It's a lawlessness vacuum that is existing. But the fact is, it's able to deliver its illegal products in the actual world through actual world networks. And I think that could be one starting point for the governments, for the lawmakers and the law enforcement agencies to get started. Get cracking on the physical world network in terms of delivery networks of the darknet websites. Once we start doing that, we can slightly get our foot into the door, and we can then start and go in a much bigger investigation. Already, when I'm looking at the Silk Route conviction, there are huge questions being asked in the manner how the law enforcement agency, in that case, the FBI, was able to secure data. In fact, a lot of times we don't even get clear answers. And it's an open secret that in a number of cases, the law enforcement agencies themselves have to go and tread into the gray area of legality versus illegality before they can go and enter into these kind of activities. So I think the trade is happening at a much stronger pace, at a much rapid ambit than we are anticipating. It's much, much bigger than the law enforcement agencies are currently envisaging. And I think merely closing our eyes cannot be the only option which currently have. We need to go far beyond. We just can't have flagship victories of 2 takedowns in 1 year or a Silk Route in another year. It needs to go far more in terms of having systematic plans, approaches on how to deal with this huge problem that's now beginning to face us in our face.
Okay, Mr. Dugal, do stay with us. Ankit, let me come over to you now. Do you agree with Mr. Dugal there? I mean, there is a concern that shutting websites like these won't really make a difference in the long run because much like a hydra, 2 more heads are likely to pop up every time. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Ankit?
Absolutely, Sahil. As Pawan also mentioned, we need to have a systematic plan. We cannot just do like shutting down 2 websites in a year or 1 website in every 2 years. We need to have a systematic plan for the government, for the countries to actually crack down on dark web. And as we all know, it's a very complex space. We need to understand that it's like an underground in the online world. Now, like we have underground markets in the real world, it's the underground market in the online world. And we all know how difficult it is to crack down on underground markets. And more than that, this is one thing. This is the complexity of the dark web. Another thing here is that we anyway have weak data protection laws. We have we don't take stringent measures when it comes to online security and data privacy. So in the absence of weak data protection laws, how fair and how easy it is for actually crack down on the dark web?
Right, Mr. Tyagi, let me come over to you now. Given all the dangers surrounding the dark web, is it high time it got shut down completely? Is that even possible?
Well, I feel that if you really want a solution, then we should learn something from Dubai or UAE. You know, they have banned the encryption program, so you can't use the encrypted communication there. Now, the problem is not the illegal or legal. The problem which I feel is the national security versus the privacy of a citizen. So if you really want to connect to the deep web, you need an application known as Tor network. If a government come up with a law that we are going to ban that application, it's illegal to use, then certainly people are not going to use that. And once you're not going to use that, you can't enter the deep web. On the other hand, the problem is that Tor network saying that we are defending because countries are doing the surveillance thanks to Edward Snowden when they come up with the detail that US is intercepting the citizens' communication. So in this case, if you're going to ban the Tor network, the organizations who are defending the privacy of a citizen, because they have to say, government is saying there's nothing to hide, nothing to fear. But these organizations saying that the government in a democratic country knows everything about you, you will lose the probability to say anything against the government or sue the government in certain issues. Now, in this case, this debate is going on from almost near about 5 to 10 years in the US and here also. So I feel like one is if you're able to ban the Tor network, this probably will give a little bit breathing room to us. Second, we are lacking of international law, like Pawan sir said, the problem is that we don't have any international police, who can come out and every country be a part of that and defend these kind of things. So maybe if the website is in Syria, for example, it is out of our jurisdiction. We can't do anything in that. And in the conviction ratio of the global criminals is very, very low, because even you able to get the criminal where he is, you have the details, maybe that country's law enforcement agency will not cooperate with you. So we have to address this issue to have a, international policing and law enforcement to work together to find out a solution when this kind of activity they have detected it's going on.
Right. Okay, Mr. Duggal, one final question. Just want your final thoughts on this. And what would you like to say to civil liberties advocates and whistleblowers who say the dark web is the last line of defense against government spying on their citizens and invading their privacy?
There's a lot of merit in their argument, and I would support that merit. But the fact is that this last line of defense should only be used for legitimate purposes. If you think that you have a fundamental right to hide behind the anonymity veil provided by the Tor and the darknet, and that you can continue to engage in cybercrime activities and yet still not be caught, I think that's not a correct assumption to get started in. Nobody is actually running away from the fact that darknet is now being also used for a large number of legitimate purposes and lawful purposes. And to that extent, it's absolutely fair for the said usage by individuals and organizations. And that's why I qualified in the beginning by saying it's only the illegal or the criminal use of the darknet for cybercrime purposes or cyber terror or cyber radicalization purposes that we believe that work needs to be done. And obviously, in the absence of an international cyber law in place, I've already talked for the last 2 years about the need for having an international convention on cyber law and cyber security, because please mind, the next wave of cyber security breaches are all coming from the darknet, and that's going to pinch sovereign nations pretty hard. And that being the case, very quickly nations have to come up with a common set of denominators of universally accepted principles, which can become the starting point for initiating a global response. Please understand, darknet is a global challenge. You cannot deal it by national or regional approaches. You will need to come up with an international approach and a perspective to deal with it. But very quickly, we'll have to start working on it. Merely ignoring it, hiding it below the carpet won't help. We need to get started right away. And lawmakers and also all stakeholders need to be a part of this discussion, including all the civil liberties group. And I think it will be the case for every civil liberty group that these civil liberties should not be used as a mechanism to hide behind and thereafter commit cybercrime
Right.
activities.
Mr.
So
Duggal,
it's a very
we're running out of
interesting
time, I'm afraid, but thank you so much for your inputs. I'd like to thank both of you, Mr. Duggal and Mr. Tyagi, for all your inputs and your perspective on this. This has been a WION special on dark web. We'll continue with more news coverage on the other side. Thank you for watching.
A diplomatic crisis is brewing between Germany and Turkey. Germany issues travel advisory and accuses Turkey of playing games. And we talk about a Dawn report which claims of ISI's rendition of suspected terrorists. Watch as we delve deeper into these stories with me, Sana Khan, tonight at 8 p.m. only on WION.